I'm going to call the meeting of the Board of State and Community Corrections to order and begin by thanking everybody for being here in December. And I'll leave it at that because you all know what it means to have to get somewhere out of town in December. It's a heavy lift, and what we have to do here today is also a heavy lift. So it's important you're here. We have a quorum and you're attending in person, with the exception of Chief Scott and Secretary McCumber. And Chief Scott, I don't think is logged on yet. Well, with that said, Secretary McCumber, I did see him, and I appreciate him logging on. He's not feeling well, but is helping us out in spite of that. So thank you, Secretary, for doing that. Unusual agenda today. We are having a closed session, and we will adjourn the meeting after closed session because prior to going into closed session, we're going to have a public comment. And to those of you joining us remotely, I appreciate you doing that during this very busy time of year. Just a little bit of a housekeeping item, but we have to begin to pay very close attention to this. COVID has created an environment where we all want to do things Zoom, and that is our preference, particularly during busy times, but legislation has changed. We really don't have the kinds of freedom for Zoom that we had previously, and understanding that there are uncontrollable circumstances why people can't travel to this meeting, I want to make sure that each board member recognizes how very important it is that you get here personally. We very much need a quorum. We have agenda items that require great consideration and an in-person vote. So I say that as my only cautionary tale of the end of 2024. And I'll move on to the next issue before us, which is to meet and discuss Los Angeles County probation. We're going to have that discussion about LA soon, and we will update our website on anything current on the LA probation issues. And so those of you in the public or board members, please visit that page if you're looking for the status of what's going on with that. There was a discussion item on our agenda that was to determine the suitability of LA. That has been stricken from the agenda. We will not be considering that today. And I will now close my, actually, I want to say a few other things before we hit the LA issue in the closed section. Regarding LA, you have all been here for all of the meetings where we've considered issues pertaining to LA. And I just want to put a few things on the record from the perspective of the chair. And we have worked long and hard to get LA County probation into compliance. They have had a half a decade to get into compliance. We insist upon having the youth in that facility safe, and the board has been strident in ensuring that is occurring. As I say that about LA, I want to remark about the 57 other counties in this state that do comport with our regulations, that are not unsuitable and have continued to do what they need to do to ensure the safety of minors. And LA is unique in this instance because we have struggled and struggled and struggled trying to get them into compliance. The county in LA was offered a great deal of technical assistance. They've had numerous opportunities to take advantage of that, and in some instances, they failed to utilize that. And for more than 6 years, they've struggled meeting the minimum standards that we require. Los Padrinos, out of compliance again. We have gone back, we have re-inspected. We have, I think, more than met our obligation to move LA into compliance, and we have found repeatedly that they are not. Now they're trying to absolve themselves. I think there's lots of conversations out there about why and they can't and it's not occurring. We're not here as a state entity. The state of California cannot solve their issues. They have to deal with their failures and move their own agenda forward and make every attempt to solve that. This Los Angeles issue at this point in time is a local issue that must be dealt with by the locals. And I'll leave my remarks at that. I don't know if anybody on the board would like to say anything. I'm certainly not asking you to if you're not comfortable, but opportunity, anybody?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hurricanes Chief Probation Officer in Fresno. I agree with you that this is a local problem that the locals need to be able to solve. I think the BSCC in our role to be able to provide the technical assistance for them to be able to come into compliance. I think that should continue to be the role that we continue to play as LA figures out what they need to do. But, you know, I agree with you also that the other 57 counties, we figure out how to get it done. No, and I'll just say this, no institution is perfect. You know, everyone has things that they have to deal with, whether they be staffing or whether they be the hard, you know, to hire folks for whatever reason. But, you know, those are some of the things that not only does the chief probation officer has a responsibility to do, but the entire county, whether it be LA, Fresno, wherever, the entire county has a role to play in making sure that facilities operate in a successful manner in compliance with Title 15 and 24. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
Madam Chair, so I'll just say a couple things that one of the struggles that I've had is just the knowledge of the absolute difficult position that a lot of us are in to recruit and retain good people, quality people, and to retain them in our facilities to make sure that we're doing a good job. Staffing is a huge issue, and I really struggled over that when we talked about LA's compliance. But what I will say is that the Board of State and Community Corrections, and I can just speak from my own personal experience as a sheriff that runs 2 correctional facilities in our county. I don't run the juvenile facility, but I do run 2 correctional facilities. Is that the amount of support, technical assistance, advice that you offer us and give us, and the ways that you come up with we can come up with corrective action plans and implement them and have oversight. I have a lot of empathy for anybody in our profession that's struggling to correctly staff or maintain their facilities, and struggles that we have with our boards to fund those things. But I do feel at this point in my heart that LA has been given ample opportunity, ample support, and I don't know, I'm struggling whether or not to bring this up, but it's part of the record that we've already spoken on. I really am struggling with the documentation in that facility that doesn't match what the video is showing. And when I can see a facility that's comfortable, in my opinion, falsifying a document that doesn't match what the video is showing, I struggle to have any faith that they're going to do anything that they say they're going to do. And that's where I am with it. You know, we have youth in the facility that say that these certain conditions are happening. You then have people in that facility that say it's not, and then you have video evidence showing that it is. And I really have struggled with that and their ability to do this correctly. So understanding the staffing and the funding issues that I think are being brought up by the County of Los Angeles, outside of that, it's an integrity thing for me at this point.
It is, and I would just say this has been a 6-year conversation about LA trying to meet those minimum staffing levels. They have not done so, and without that, they cannot protect the young people that are incarcerated in their facilities. And what I'm hearing from them now is they're trying to absolve themselves of their obligation and their responsibility to do that. And that's not where we need to be. Yes.
I have actually a question.
Yes.
So my understanding of what was on the agenda for today, perhaps is not what's happening. I have been recused from the suitability. I don't know where we're going with this, but I'm wondering if that's an appropriate time for me to be leaving.
That's a good question.
Thank you, Judge
Deleting
Gard.
that
I
item?
apologize for that. And Adam, why don't you call the roll? And then we'll ask Judge Gard to excuse herself.
Chair Penner,
Present?
Mr. McCumber,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Haynes,
Here.
Mr. Taylor,
Here.
Miss Branning, Miss Guard,
Here.
Mr. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Budnick is absent today, Miss Zaragoza,
Here.
Miss Kumpion,
Here.
Miss Lai.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. If you would address Judge Guard's question, and then we'll then turn to how the public can participate, which is down the agenda a while here, but we need to do it before we get much further.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think at this time, Madam Chair was addressing the fact that we had stricken an item related to the suitability off the calendar with her opening remarks. And then we will be going into closed session on issues regarding LA as well. So I would ask at this time, yeah, Ms. Guard can
Continue
be excused.
recusal. Okay, thank you. Bye. Thank you for coming. Adam, let's now go through our regular conversation, which is those of you who are in the public and are going to participate via Zoom. The instructions from Adam are as follows.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I will give instructions for this meeting. We are using the Zoom webinar platform for the board members who are attending remotely and will support public participation during this meeting. If you are connecting by phone, please be sure to mute your microphones or phones by dialing *6 to mute and unmute. When you are called upon to speak, please eliminate background noise before unmuting your microphone. If we missed you, please send a written comment to publiccomment@bscc.ca.gov. Board members in person and on Zoom, if you wish to make a comment, please use the raised hand feature if you are on Zoom, or physically raise your hand so we could see you. For members in the board room, please state your name before you make your comment so that those participating remotely may know who is speaking. Members of the public, we will give the members of the public the opportunity to comment during the public comment period. Agenda item 2 is the opportunity for any member of the public to make a comment. You will have 2 minutes for your comment. Participants on Zoom who wish to make a comment, again, please email publiccomment@bscc.ca.gov with your name. You can also use the raise hand feature on your Zoom application. If you are calling by phone, again, dial *9 to raise your hand and dial *6 to unmute yourself. We will lower your hand once your name is received. You do not need to raise your hand again. We will record your name as soon as we see your hand raised. Please be patient, and I will call out your name. Public participants in the boardroom, please proceed to the podium when it is time for public comment. Board members in the room, as a reminder, please turn off your microphones when you are not speaking. Remote members and public on Zoom, please also mute yourselves when you are not speaking. We thank you for your patience and participation. Madam Chair, that concludes my instructions.
Thank you. Just a slight correction. Scott Budnick is recused on this item, so he has sort of he's not just absent purposefully. How's that? Do we have members of the public wishing to comment at this point?
Right now, we have 3 members of the public on Zoom who has raised their hands, and in the room, we don't have any, so I will start calling the names, and the timer is up. So the first person will be Socorro. You have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
I don't have any comment.
No comment?
No comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Nathan. Nathan, did you raise your hand? I don't see your hand raised now, but if you could re-raise it if you would still like to make a public comment, and there you are. Nathan, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, board members and Madam Chair.
I'm the operations director of Barrier with Strong, a nonprofit advocating for the most vulnerable and systematically disadvantaged. I speak on the crisis that we have in Riverside County. Riverside County had the deadliest jail system in the nation in 2022. We've had 43 deaths in custody in the last 3 years. Our death rate has increased 133% since 2011. The BSCC only has one investigator and one data researcher for over 145,000 detainees statewide. This is nowhere enough to enforce Title 15 standards, and I call on the BSCC to increase funding for both the investigator and the data. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Paloma Serna. Paloma, you have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Paloma Serna. I am the mother of Elisa Serna, who died at the San Diego County Jail on November 11th of 2019. I'm also with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Saving Lives in Custody, California. I think Allison Ganter and Michael Lee and Jana Stanford Miller for attending a listening session in San Diego this past Saturday. But also one thing that we learned during that meeting, we actually helped host that meeting. But one thing that I did learn was that they will not be investigating in custody deaths that happen if a individual is sent to the hospital. So we have one case, Eric Van Tyne. He had mental illness. He was beaten so badly that he was put into a coma for 10 months. So what the San Diego sheriff did, Kelly Martinez, she did a compassion release. He just passed 5 weeks ago. So it's very disturbing to know that the new director of in custody review division will not be investigating his death. So we need some help regarding this because we have a few deaths like that. I mean, for instance, my daughter died 5 days after being in custody. And it's, if they were to call 911 and she died along the way, she would never be investigated, her case.
Thank you, Paloma. Next, we have Israel. Israel, you lowered your hand. Did you still want to speak? If so, please raise your hand. There you are. And you have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Muy buenas tardes. Israel Salazar Villa, he, him, his, with the California Alliance for Youth and Community Justice. In full transparency, I did not have time to prepare a statement, and I'm not even clear what my ask is of this board. However, do want to acknowledge and appreciate y'all for what has been an absolutely frustrating back and forth with Los Angeles and these issues of unsuitability. And so thank you for fulfilling your role and attempting to hold your fellow system stakeholders accountable. I'm not sure, and I'm not clear what's next. I don't know. I've ever seen law enforcement blatantly disregard their own policies, procedures, and the law. But I hope that there is some real attention, perhaps from the governor. Still wondering where the governor's at in all this abuse of children that continues to happen. Been pretty quiet. Wondering where the Department of Justice is at in these mass amounts of abuse, neglect, and so on and so forth. And it really hurts my heart because as a young person, it was hard for me to stay out of the Monterey County Juvenile Hall, and this was in the early 90s. And I myself have a lot of experience of being chemically sprayed, hands and feet, knees beat up by probation. A lot of the same abuses were happening in the 90s, before the 90s, since the 90s. And so I'm glad that we're finally at a place where it's being unveiled, and these historic harms and abuses have not just happened in LA. There's actually some of them are happening in other places. And so more than anything, I hope that these folks who have our kids there for accountability are actually held accountable. Because this is absolutely disgusting, appalling, and shame on the probation down there and the LA Board of Supervisors for their cowardice motion yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Annabelle. Annabelle, your hands is no longer raised. Would you still like to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, so we'll move on to Aaron Palacios. Aaron, you have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm hoping you can hear me. I wanted to first say there's a lot to discuss about LA, and I know you're going into closed session. There's a limited amount that has to do with pending litigation, so I guess I'm want to make sure that that's all that gets discussed there, but also ask if there's going to be any report back or reason to wait on the other side of this meeting, such that we should hold open a window. And I also, with that question out of the way, I want to say I am encouraged by the board being willing to hold LA accountable. It's been a number of years like this where I think a lot of the community has been deeply frustrated as LA comes in and out of suitability and doesn't ever actually have to be held accountable. And I'm hopeful that this is a step in the right direction, even though it's not actually getting them into compliance right now. I also wanted to say that while I agree that legally the board, because the board has found all of the other facilities suitable, there's not a way to say that they are unsuitable, but that does not mean they're all doing well. And I just want to be cautious about pretending that 57 other counties are doing well. The board issued more notices of noncompliance and unsuitability in the last 2 years than I have found in any of its prior records, even when it was the CSA and the Board of Corrections. And I have a feeling that's partly just because we're watching more closely. But I think a lot of facilities this year, we saw very similar staffing, room confinement, education, programs, recreation, exercise, use of force issues across the state. So I just want us to be mindful of the fact that, well, LA is the biggest problem. It is not the only problem. And I want to make sure the board realizes it needs to hold all of those other counties accountable as well, because many of them are starting to come in and out of suitability and compliance in the way that LA started. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one in the queue, in answer to your question regarding staying with the meeting, you're more than welcome to stay in the Zoom meeting, but we will not, we will simply come back on the record to adjourn the meeting. So it wouldn't seem necessary for you to stay. And the only other thing I'd comment on is remarks regarding the governor and whether the governor cares about what we're doing. I am here to tell you we are an agent of the governor, and we are all appointed by the governor, and we are here to do the job of the governor. And so I just feel like that has to be on the record. With that said, I'm prepared to go into closed session. To those of you on Zoom, please leave the meeting, this open meeting, and go into the link shared by council. You should have that. Are you both seeing it? While they're looking for that link, anyone in the room not here for the special session, politely ask you to leave. Back in session, and I will officially adjourn this meeting. And for now, we'll all see you back February 13th, 2025 for our next meeting. Thank you.